Windows Phone 8.1 is going to be getting now what's becoming a requirement for smartphones, a digital assistant named Cortana. It's actually smarter than Siri in that it has a memory that's similar to what happens with something like Google Now, where it's learning about you, learning about your needs, and trying to provide the kind of information that you need before you even ask. That'd be handy this morning. Yeah. Predictive search is the name for this kind of aspect that some digital assistants provide. I find that really important in the combination when I'm trying to explain it to people. It's like you get a lot of things in the digital assistants on your phone. The ability to tell them all, like, set the alarm, like I did last night, yeah, that's handy, but that's a far different thing from you need to leave the house right now because I know that you have a flight in 20 minutes and you're not going to make it without you doing anything at all. That's the idea of predictive search or predictive suggestions. I've been writing about search for nearly 20 years now, and I tell people I tend to get very jaded when somebody says, and this is really amazing, it's really going to change how everybody does stuff. And the predictive search stuff is one of those things that really makes me go, wow, when I see it. So to talk more about predictive search in general and Cortana specifically, if you please join me in welcoming Rob Chambers, a Group Program Manager, Applications Services Group with Microsoft Research, and Marcus Ash, who is a Group Program Manager for Windows Phone. Thank you. And to start us off, we're going to have a little video about Cortana, and we'll have a little demo.
That's right. Thanks, Danny. So we'll show you guys just a quick intro video that we gave at the Build Talk. Rob and I will give a demo, 7 to 10 minutes, just to give you a sense of what Cortana is, and then we're going to have a Q&A session and hear from the audience as well.
I'm Cortana.
All right. So that's the intro video we showed before Joe Belfiore gave his big demo. Now, Rob and I want to give you guys a sense of Cortana. We're just going to walk through the various areas of the product. There's two big things that we try to illustrate in that video. One, we think the future of search is about the marriage of traditional search, knowing what's on the internet, making that available to you, things that we've been doing for many, many years now, as well as knowing about you as a person. What do you like? What do you need? How can I help you? More of the personal assistant flavor. One decision we made early on is those are not separate things in our minds. We think they're the same thing. So when you look at the Cortana interface, take me probably a second just to set this up, grab Rob's cable here. One thing, like I said, we decided early on was we feel like traditional search married with natural language and all the other things that are happening on more of the personal assistant side is the right approach. We don't have to train people to go off and learn two separate interfaces. Our idea was we really need to make this simple for people. Let's just have one place, the search button where you go, and the behaviors that you have for Cortana are the same as the behaviors you're already used to on search. Shout out to my two little twin girls there. Oh. You guys can come over anytime and babysit, by the way. We're always looking for babysitters. Get this cable so you can plug that in so you can hear it later. And now the projection needs to go over there. So what you see here is I push the search button on my screen. We show a personalized greeting for Cortana. I'll just explain the various elements. Top left, music icon. People tend to listen to music a lot. Cortana can help you with that. When there's a song you want to play, push that music note. Remember what the song is and then store that for you later. Top right is something we call the notebook. So early on, we went and visited a bunch of personal assistants, and we asked them, what makes you great at your job? One thing that really stuck out to us was the rigor that they have. And they record everything. I follow this person, I know what they do, I know what they say, I know what they tell me that they like, that they really don't like. I mean, all this very nuanced information, like they'd show us these notebooks that were very thick. So the idea we had was, well, we should create something similar for our assistant. Since this assistant has to track a lot of personal information in a very privacy-friendly opt-in way, we want you to know what she's tracking and why she's tracking it. So we thought that metaphor really made sense when we built Cortana. So when you tap on that icon, it's called a notebook. Here I can see all the things that Cortana is tracking for me. Cortana in the morning, tell me what's going on for my day. I really like to discover interesting places to eat and drink, so I'm happy if you provide that information to me. But again, it's all opt-in. If I don't want it, I tell her, hey, I'm not interested in that, and she won't do it. A bunch of stocks that I'm tracking. I'm from Michigan, so I track Detroit teams. Unfortunately, they're all pretty bad. Sans the Tigers. Hummingbird, we heard that there was an incident with a hummingbird last night. I'm waiting for this to be breaking news, so I decided to track that. I'm a user experience guy, so I've learned a lot this week about search engine optimization, a bunch of other things, so I start tracking news stories about that. And as you go down the list, trip planners, so another thing that we have is this ability when you take a trip, for Cortana, say you're taking a trip, here's the itinerary, here's when you should get to the airport, here's a map of the airport. So this idea of collecting a bunch of information that's scattered, some things in emails, some things on the internet, are things that we're trying to bring to Cortana. And then weather near me. So I push it back here. Some other things in the notebook, reminders. So we have a couple of different reminders. Rob will show you some natural language examples here. The next time I talk to my mom, I want to remind myself to ask her what we're going to get for my sister who's getting married this summer. Pick up Excedrin and diaper cream. The next way I'm at a Safeway. This is an interesting thing where we looked at how people make reminders. Reminders is one of the most used functions for these voice assistants today. And we found that people were doing a lot of hacky things. I usually get home at 6 o'clock, so I'd set a reminder at 6 o'clock to go off to remind me to do something versus just saying, hey, when I get home. So we thought, boy, I think the triggers that people tend to use are time, people, and location. When I get to a Safeway, I just want to remember to buy it. I don't care which Safeway it is, just any Safeway, or any grocery store for that matter. So we did a lot of work on, you can abstract a reminder so that you can say, when I get to a place, it could be a specific place, a physical address or a named place. It could be a category that the place is in or even a broader category. Grocery store versus Safeway on Madison. You could ask for either one of those. And Cortana's smart enough to know when you want to trigger a reminder. Quiet hours, the idea that Cortana's managing and helping you eliminate noise was something that was interesting to us. Most phones have this feature today, but we thought, hey, a personal assistant actually would help you determine when it's appropriate to contact me. And there's some interesting things we do here about you can have an inner circle so those people can break through by adding a simple Cortana tag to their messages. The other thing you can do is you can add a reply that says, I'm busy now. So, I've decided to I've been learning about title tags this week and how important they are, so I felt I should really go all the way with Cortana and make her address me as Highness, Liege, Boss, all kinds of other things. Places is just favorite places, so when you ask Cortana to remember a place, she'll either infer it for you. So if you wait at home long enough, usually it takes 3 to 4 days, she'll say, is this your home? I want you to know that I want to know your home because I'll give you commute times to and from home for work. Or you can always ask me, hey, I need to get home, and I'll figure out where that is and get you directions. So we have this opt-in model called chat. The idea is anytime Cortana has a piece of information that she's inferred, she asks you to confirm, and she tells you why she wants to know it. So we think that's important for 2 reasons. One, there's just general privacy concerns that we'd like to avoid. We feel like if we ask you a simple yes/no question, no harm, no foul, you'll tell us yes or no, and you'll also know exactly why we want to know that information. Whether it's a family relationship, something that you think is personal, like where you work, where you live. We thought that was a very simple privacy control model that we've implemented for this version. So home and work have already been inferred for me. And Cortana will also remember other places. You tend to go to this place at 9 o'clock in the morning every day. Is this a daycare? We'll look at what the place is based on Bing's database and try to infer, can we help you with this daycare? So I have to drop my kids off every day. So as the system learns more, you'll see more places show up in this favorite places. And this also syncs across all of your Windows devices. So you don't have to enter home in multiple places. And then music search and settings. So the last thing I'll show before I hand off to Rob is what the what we call the proactive canvas looks like. This is the predictive search piece that Danny was talking about. So it's in the morning. Cortana knows that I like to see top headlines in the morning news. It's showing me the weather for my current location. It's also showing me what my first appointment was. So every morning this information shows up. It's the first thing I look at. We think this is a good way to draw people into the Cortana experience. One thing we're really trying to do is change behavior. We really want people to come to Cortana, frankly, do a lot of searching. The number one thing people do far and away in Cortana today, based on the user preview that we have out there right now, a few 100,000 users, is search. So we think by drawing people into Cortana, we're already helping change behavior. Don't need to go to the browser. Come to Cortana if you want to search. The search bar is right there. You can use voice, and then we give you predictive information that we hope creates a different habit. Watch list for stocks. The other thing you can do is we have a link here. I won't tap it just for time, but if you do manage my watch list, you go into an app. So we are a big believer in third-party app extensibility. The idea that apps can provide a proactive link, and then you can click into it to get more information in the app versus going to, say, bing.com or a website, we think just gives a richer experience. We want people to use the apps that they really like. So in this case, I use Bing Finance to manage these stocks. If I click on Manage My Watch List, that's all handled through Bing Finance. The Tigers are still playing. The Miami Heat are playing tonight at 6. All right. They didn't do so well the other night. Detroit Lions, I just like pain. Tigers are doing pretty well, and so on. So one example I'll show before I hand off to Rob. The World Cup's going on right now, so if I was to search for the World Cup, just to show you guys the integration. Again, Cortana, type, talk, doesn't matter to us. It's the same interface. We want this consistent experience that people know how to use. If I go to World Cup 2014, I can see predictions. These are standard answers that Bing's providing to us. Cortana's powered by Bing. So all this information. And then if I see something like news, I can say, oh, this looks interesting. Update me on this news topic. So the idea now is Cortana knows that I've told her, hey, I really want to get this kind of news. So as that happens, the news should show up here on the canvas. So now I'm seeing World Cup news show up in my proactive canvas. So this blending of traditional search with predictive behavior, just a very simple signal, we think is incredibly powerful. That's why we think these things should be combined and should be thought of as the same thing. And one last thing I forgot to show is we have this interesting concept of people-based reminders. So I showed you what that means. So if my mom was to call me or she was to text me, this reminder about my sister's wedding would show up. I could say, okay, I'll talk to my mom. And then we also have Cortana sprinkled in other areas of the system. So in this case, she's talking about the fireworks on the 4th of July. So if I tap on this, Cortana knows, okay, this is probably an appointment, because people do a lot of informal scheduling in SMS or email. And it's able to infer what the intent of the message was. Go to the fireworks is what my mom was suggesting. So not only is she living in the search experience, she's also living in SMS and email, other places where you tend to go scheduling and doing other things. And we expect that to be a very important part of how we think about predictive search and the personal assistant metaphor in the future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rob, because he's going to show you some of the cool natural language stuff.
Thanks, Marcus. So as Marcus pointed out, Cortana is a very proactive assistant. She can find out things about you and help you with that. But she's also a great assistant when you know what you want and you want it right now. So when I think of how I divide that up, I think Cortana is great at communicating. She's great at finding things. She's great at helping remember things. And specifically, the version we have now, she's great at doing those operations across world information, calendar kinds of information, people, places, things of that nature. So let me show you just a couple examples of that, and then we'll get on with the rest of the show. So again, Cortana right here. In the middle of the screen, we see these tips show up right here where it says, try text John on my way, or try get me directions to Times Square. That way the user can learn what it is that they can say in a very easy rotating text fashion. There's also a link, and if I were to click that, you get all the examples of the things that you can do around phone capabilities, messaging, calendars, reminders, notes, all that. And then as Marcus pointed out, there's app extensibility. Many of these are apps that are in the store today, and a handful of them I've written just because I like Cortana, and it's an easy way to get the phone to do tasks for me easily. So with that, let me show you a couple examples. So we showed a little bit of calendaring and reminder kind of capabilities. You can do those by voice. So turn the volume up so you can hear better. Remind me the next time I talk to Dwayne to ask him who would win in a fight between him and Matt? Mac?
Okay, next time you talk to Dwayne, I'll remind you to ask him who would win in a fight between him and Mac.
Close enough.
So another thing to point out there is we've got alternatives in here, and you can correct it very, very simply like that. Save it, and I'm good. Okay? Calendaring
Sure
type.
thing.
There we go. So now if I were to be in a conversation with Matt in some sort of electronic form, or Cortana knew I was doing that, it would remind me. So scheduling types of things as well, you can just set them easily. Oh, wait. What fight? Nothing but love. There you go.
You got a text from Dwayne. Should I read it or ignore?
Right? Good assistance, no one to interrupt you. Maybe that would have been. So in this particular instance, if I would have gone to see that text message from Dwayne, and like that, then Cortana reminds me of the operation that I've asked her to do so, right? Just like Marcus had shown. So scheduling types of things we can do. Schedule an appointment for Saturday at 9 a.m. called Go Play Soccer with My Boys.
Okay, add go play soccer with my voice to your calendar.
That's, tough audience, tough
boys, it's in
acoustics.
the correction.
Oh, it was in the correction, that's right. So go play with Marcus with boys. Okay, save that. And then if I want to figure out, like querying on the calendar because she's great at searching, she can do that too. So I could say, when is my Hawaii trip?
You have trip to Hawaii on Saturday, June 28th from 12.
Just like that. And so very easy access to all my information. I also have very easy access to information in the world. So in Hawaii, I'm hoping to see some good pictures of sunsets, and I hear that some participants up here have a lot of interest in sunsets as well. So just a regular search kind of example. Danny Sullivan sunset pictures. There they are, and I believe that was Dwayne. So click on that, and I think that first one is yours there, right?
Yeah, looks like it.
That's right, searchdigitally.com. All right, the third-party kind of integrations I wanted to demonstrate quickly as well. So if we go down here, a bunch of different apps, kind of interesting things you can do. One might be, Bing has a lot of information, Cortana knows a ton of stuff, but sometimes there's information in other apps, or you want to just be really fast. So for example, when I was driving here, I went past a movie theater, and I was like, oh yeah, there are a couple of movies that I'd like to see, but I don't know what time they are. So I can ask. Flixer, what time does 22 Jump Street start?
Searching for 22 Jump Street showtimes.
And so Flixer did a little bit of work over a few days
Got
and
it.
integrated it directly into their application. So instead of landing in Cortana, it lands into the application, both in a good search experience. I see the show times. If I wanted to see the movie information, I can swipe back, or I can click back to actually edit the search very simply. We did that with a number of applications that we announced to build, and others are working on it now. It's an open SDK. One great one is Twitter. I heard there was the party last night, the After Dark party was good, so I wanted to see what that looked like. Twitter, search for hashtag SMX Bing.
Search Twitter.
So it knows things like how to actually create a hashtag. We'll go into Twitter, it'll do the search. And there we go. That's a nice picture.
Oh, God, that's right.
It's all coming back
for the
to
world
Danny
to see.
now.
I remember that, yes. That was,
Now you do,
barely
right? Yes.
remember.
Okay,
Barely
good.
it was me and a fish and a selfie. So.
Exactly. So that's a taste of the kinds of things you can do from an interactive, when you want to do something, just jump right into it with the Cortana natural language experience.
Great. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
I got to ask you later on, because I don't have the watch list showing up, and I don't know where that's at. So I've been using Cortana for about 2 months now. And it's interesting. It's got developments that get going, and it's also interesting on what it's pulling out for me. And that's kind of what I want to start off with, is if you could talk to how it's gathering some of this information, the data sources that are coming in to learn about the things that it's providing.
Sure. So the Bing team, in cooperation with the Windows Phone team, there are parts that run on the client device itself to gather signals, and there are parts that run in the cloud to gather signals. So for example, if a user expresses that they're interested in a news article, as Marcus did, that sets a rule basically that runs. That particular rule runs in the service. And so we pay attention to the world data and the world data changing. So all the feeds that come into Bing and everything that Bing knows about, when one of those rules fires, we then in a high-performant way communicate out to all those that have subscribed to that particular interest so that the Cortana proactive canvas can take a look at that. And that's a world kind of data change. There's also personal data, right, that we take a look at. So and we showed some examples in the proactive capabilities in text messages where we have entity extraction running inside text messages so we can know what a date is, and we can therefore pull that out. We can also pull out the subject or other aspects of it to populate a new message if you wanted that message.
And now some of the things you're looking at is, for example, if you have a calendar on your phone, you're going to be doing that. Are you going to pull the information if the calendar is on the cloud? And is that tied in with your Microsoft account? Do you pull that in, or does it have to be on the phone itself?
Good question. So the way we've got it implemented today, all of the calendaring information you have on your device and the personal information that's on your device, we can use to do those kinds of queries and predictions. And that way you can aggregate across multiple calendar providers. I have a couple calendars. I've got my work calendar, which is hosted on Exchange at Microsoft. And then I've got a home calendar that actually also is hosted on Office 365. And so I have both calendars available. I can search over both contexts. So it's not cloud to cloud, but it's client to cloud as configured on the client.
And one of the other areas that you're harvesting is the email that's coming in. And if I understand right, the email just on the device itself. So, but you can look at email from any kind of a provider, well, except for Yahoo. I think that's still the case. But for most providers.
Right. For most providers, yeah.
There's this weird little quirk where Microsoft can't look at Yahoo email or something. I think that's still the case. But for example, if someone were on a Gmail account and that's coming into their device, you can use that information and look through the email and then have the suggestions that come up that will come off of that.
Yeah, that's right. There's a simple client classifier that runs. We think there's something interesting in this mail that you can detect, a flight, an event, and then if we need help from the service, all we know is there's a flight in this, and it's from Expedia, or it's from one of those sources, independent of who sent it, like which service you run. We send it up to Bing for the processing that tells, oh, there is a flight in here, and here are the dates. And then through the Bing service, we know that we get what's called a flight chat. And the flight chat is, do you want me to track Delta flight, making this up, 172, leaving on these dates? If you say yes, then that'll show up at the right time and give you tracking information 24 hours before the flight. If you say no, then we forget about it and it leaves our system. So that's the basic model is very simple client classification. There's something interesting, and then more service horsepower. And well, actually, what is it that we're looking at?
So like in my case, I had a confirmation for my flight to our next show, Martech out in Boston. There was a flight change that came into my email, and then like 2 hours later, Cortana, I turned it on, and it was like, hey, I spotted this flight in your email. Do you want me to add that to the list? And that was that sort of proactive, yes, I would like you to do that.
That's right.
And that leads into next question in terms of when I talk with people about who use Google now, they often refer to it as scary good.
Yep.
It's like scary good. I was just kind of curious, how many people use Siri on a regular? I doubt how many are using Cortana, but you don't have it, so none of you have to do it. But how many are using Siri on a regular basis? How many are using Google now? Okay. But it just figures out a lot of the stuff, and it just starts showing up. And that's awesome in some cases because I don't, that's the good part. You're like going, wow, and it just did this sort of stuff. But in other cases, like this week, it started tracking Barry Schwartz, my news editor's flight for me because he sent us the invoice to reimburse him with his flight details. So now I was like, it thought I was on his flight, so it was coming up there, but it just kind of put that all there. But why not, or have you considered being more aggressive with Cortana and saying, all right, well, let's be scary good as well. Let's just, do more of this stuff and see what we can automatically do.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think we looked at this problem. Probably one of the hardest design problems is how do you give people control, but still have the magic moment? And that's where we came up with this concept, yes, no question. The system needs a lot of data to do the right predictive behaviors. Until you have that, if you get really aggressive, our hypothesis is it turns people off. There's a lot of false positives. It doesn't really know much about me. Kind of interesting, but I'm not really willing to invest more time to make it better. So our thought was to really bootstrap the system, since we don't know a lot of data about the user until they actually get into it and give us a bunch of information, that they choose to give us. We thought this yes-no question concept was the right approach. But then we looked at other things like appointments, calendar appointments, where you explicitly put in an address. And we said, well, in that case, if Danny was to put in an address somewhere, it's very helpful for us to give him directions. And we didn't feel like that's some breach in trust. You already put this information in your calendar appointment. The fact that we're showing you should leave early with a physical address and a calendar appointment made a lot of sense to us. So I think we're really looking at it on a case-by-case basis for now. I think when we start to get a lot of data, the ideal model will be it's all dependent on the person. If I'm a person that could care less and really want Cortana to show me all the magic and please don't ask me a bunch of questions, we really want to create a system where that will work for you. If I'm a person that really doesn't want her to know anything about me, unless I do the reactive stuff Rob showed, I'm not really comfortable with home and work and family relationships and all that, please don't show it. We also want to make a system that works for that. I think for this first version, since it's so early, we rested on what's the simplest design that we thought we could come up with that would lead us down this path later on. We can make that choice and give people more choice and flexibility about how they want to manage the data that Cortana has access to.
Relating it into sort of a search world, we're really trying to make sure we have high precision on what we're returning and giving to the user. We don't want like low precision and lots of information, like a kid in the back seat. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Do you like this flight? Do you like this thing? Right? It needs to be more like a great assistant that you hire,
right,
and that you would talk to it. Then your assistant would be very good in those first few weeks or months, and then after the relationship between the assistant and the manager gets better, so does the experience.
Now, how's or can you talk a bit more about the integration that happens with Bing in terms of searches you're doing on the phone, as well as searches you may be doing on the desktop? Because there are connections with that.
Sure. So the underlying infrastructure behind Cortana at some point becomes the exact same infrastructure that we use for a Bing.com search. The entire way we deal with answers, the way we deal with the algo results that show up. And so we've made some adjustments and some tunings to make sure that we do have that high precision. Some of the answers that you would get if I asked a sports query, if we absolutely are sure it's a sports query and we're satisfying your intent, we'll display it in a full screen sort of mode. Whereas if we have less, we're less sure, it would show up as an answer, sort of like embedded into the algo results, probably more toward the top. But the underlying architecture and infrastructure is the same, and we just have different renderers for the different device types.
And then also you have I've tried this where if I'm on the desktop and I do the search, I can link the search that I've done and have that tie into my interest list.
Yeah.
But that's still the same sort of thing where I manually do it. You're not coming in and just picking up yet.
On Bing.com today, you can track interest, but you have to tell us it's okay for
Right.
Cortana to make use of those on the phone.
Right.
And can people track the interest on Bing.com if they don't have Cortana yet?
They can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which we highly recommend everyone does. The feature that I showed around interest, you can actually go to Bing.com settings, log into Bing, and you can do the same thing. You can track news and sports and weather and all those different categories of things on Windows across Bing.com.
So if the home page experience, page 0 experience with the image of the day, down at the bottom there are those nice graphics about trending topics. If you have tracked items from either from Cortana or from Bing.com itself, they start showing up in the first few positions in that carousel. So like I see when there's new news about Cortana, or I see news about like a flight that I'm taking.
Flight information shows up too.
Now, when you brought Cortana out to the world really at the Build conference, which is in April, prior to that, were we talking people internally within Microsoft, maybe a few hundred using it? Would that even be a higher number than that, or
higher than that.
before
Definitely
Build?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At our peak, we're thousands of people that were using it across our two respective organizations.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, even still you see
Right.
some of the speech recognition errors. It's just a function of data.
But where are you at now? Because now developers can get it, and in fact, anybody who has a Windows, it's not hard to take a regular Windows phone and bring it up to 8.1 if you want to do it.
Right.
So where are you at now in terms of usage?
We can't give an exact number. Hundreds of thousands is the right general ballpark. We're really excited that in the next couple of months, as devices come out in the US, both updates plus new phones, that's when we'll see big consumer spike. Like right now, you have to go to the developer preview. We don't call it a beta. We call it a developer preview for good reasons. And you have to sign up and you have to download an app and then get the app to run and get a new build on your phone. So it's a bit cumbersome. But we're surprised at a couple things. One, half the users that have done this are outside the U.S. Mm-hmm. So when we looked at the total numbers, we're just fascinated. Like 30% of the users are from China. Like there's just a huge number of people outside of the U.S. using Cortana right now, which is fantastic from our perspective. One, there's a lot of demand, we think, at least from our enthusiast community and developers around this feature that we built. Awesome. The other thing is we're getting a lot of data. Like we're getting a lot of kind of accent variation data into the system, which we think is really going to help us make it great for consumers.
So Cortana is big in China.
It's big. It's big. It's a big deal.
I mean, it is, but any sense why? I mean, what?
You know, we are working on Cortana for China right now. So we have a team in China. Announcements are pending. We've actually already announced it's coming this year. And what we found so far is predictive search is very nascent there. I mean, it's still relatively nascent here, but you know, Google Now, Cortana, Siri, I think people generally have a sense of where this is going. But in China, what we found is there's no Google Now presence because Google's made some decisions around that. Siri's really regulated at the top end. So, you know, it's a 3,000 plus RMB phone, which is quite expensive. So Siri's this thing that's kind of a very high-end feature. So our positioning for China is we're going to bring the same feature to Cortana and on a very low-end handset. Low-end not in terms of functionality, low-end in terms of really price. And then when we looked at the overall industry, there's a bunch of people doing interesting things, but distribution gets to be a very hard problem. Baidu's kind of experimenting, but unless you're buying an Android phone with something built into it, like Google has here, like we're going to have with the Cortana, I think it's just hard to get people to use these things. So China feels wide open to us. We're excited. We can't wait to get Cortana out there. And actually, in a lot of ways, I think we'll get credit for pioneering what should be happening in China around assistance.
Other countries that stand out like that?
China's definitely the big one.
Right.
I think we already committed to the UK the same time frame as China.
Yeah.
We're certainly looking at Western Europe. We're looking at other English-speaking countries. So Canada, Australia, India are big markets for us on Windows Phone. And we can take the existing US and UK models and hopefully get something quickly out there. And then Brazil, Russia, Korea, Japan. I mean, these are the other markets that we're talking a lot about internally. Trying to get Cortana to as many customers as possible, given the initial feedback we've gotten, given the fact so many people outside the US are using it, is our top priority right now.
Another interesting point from an engagement standpoint, previous developer previews of the phone, you know, they were good. But what we're seeing here is that this drove that to a completely new level of both from a developer community being interested in the capabilities of integration, but also it put a lot of people over the edge of like, I'm not a developer, but I can have Cortana? Awesome, I'll download that. And so we're just seeing unprecedented numbers of people using the developer preview.
I'll tweet out a link later with my own story that had the instructions on it, but I am now a Microsoft developer. And I coded up a page that it was nothing. It was really simple to do. So you don't have to be a developer to get it going.
Yeah, you can actually download it without even downloading the tools.
Yeah, it was, that's right. All I did was click on a thing saying, sure, I'm a developer, and then it was like, download this app. All right, okay, I'm done. When's the release schedule again? Roughly, I don't know if you come out with the.
Yeah, it's really depending on partners. I don't even remember what our internal name is for Nokia anymore. Nokia, now part of Microsoft, has a roadmap, but they don't announce it or release it. It's between them and the mobile operators for the most part. We work on the software side, so the releases, those dates are actually.
But it's part of Windows 8.1.
It is.
And that's going to come marked with the first Nokia new devices that come out.
That's right.
Okay.
So this summer is the target date for a series of updates to the existing line of phones in the US, as well as some new phones, new handsets that'll be built for Windows Phone 8.1.
And how's the, just sort of the general progress, how has it been going? And any other summary in terms of the kinds of things that you're seeing that are happening with it when people are using it? Or maybe more
sure.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so we were just talking earlier this morning about the change in behavior of people using text versus voice, right? So we had some voice capabilities in the previous generation of the product where you could do voice search, but it didn't have all the other capabilities that Cortana has. And so we've seen a massive increase in the developer preview population of the ratio of voice queries instead of text queries. It's multiple factors. One is that the recognition accuracy is significantly better, but then the other is that people just get more used to using a natural interaction pattern because they use it for calendaring or they use it for alarms or something like that. They get a little bit more comfortable using it, and then they start doing more searches with it, and then it starts to snowball into a pattern. It's a little bit like I remember when I moved to Seattle back in '95, and cell phones were pretty nascent then. And so I went to a Bellevue Square Mall that's nearby, and you would never see anybody with a cell phone. But then that just started to take off, right? Because the value was starting to be seen by people, and then it became more and more acceptable. The same thing is true with speech recognition from a natural interaction pattern. Once the value's there, more people will do it.
Yeah, I think we're shocked at the number of voice queries going to Bing. Pleasantly surprised, in order of magnitude improvement.
And because people can do different things, like, people can speak to it, set my alarm, and then people can speak to it and say, I want you to search for something.
Right.
I assume when you see something that I've got to send that off to Bing, you would classify that as a search as opposed to
Yes,
a
that's
voice
right.
action.
That's
Yeah,
right.
these are just people searching Bing using natural language voice. Like we were seeing a huge increase in that, which is great because I think, like Rob said, that's telling us we're changing behavior, which is really the intent. The other thing we've seen is people using the browser to search less, like less queries going into the address bar of the browser, which on Windows Phone is a combined search box, and people are using Cortana more. So the query numbers haven't gone down. From Windows Phone 8 to Windows Phone 8.1, we're seeing essentially good number of queries. The shape of the query curve looks the same, a lot of energy in the long tail, all looks great. So we were a little worried in the beginning, if you put all these features in front of somebody, like this concept of merging made sense to us, but we were actually pretty worried. Well, what if we're damaging search? Like, what if people are searching less? That would defeat the purpose because we want people to search. That's a primary function people use on the phone. So far, so good. We haven't seen that really change at all. We've seen people doing that through Cortana way more than they're doing it in the browser. It's roughly 50-50 today on Windows Phone 8, roughly, search button versus address bar. Right now in Cortana, we've skewed that way towards search, which is a positive result, our opinion. The other thing we've seen is this query category we've coined chit chat, kind of a query category around tell me a joke, do an impersonation. When we started looking at chit chat, we were a little dubious about it, like, oh, is it interesting? Is it a gimmick? But then we looked at a bunch of logs, so we have a speech platform, and we could actually see if you're a third party on Windows Phone and you use our speech platform, we can take a look at the general query types. And we found, like, depending on the application, 10 to 20% were in this category. So we said, boy, there's something going on here. Like, people are doing this for some other reason than just, pure entertainment factor. So we added it, and basically we've added a new query category is the way we capture what's happening. You still have the general search distribution, which we love, but then there's this new thing, which has generated a whole bunch of head queries for us. And I think the opportunity we have there is, boy, if someone says, tell me a joke, that's an invitation for Cortana to not only entertain, but maybe learn something. If someone says, hey, what do you think? What's a better product, Xbox One or PS4? That could be an opportunity for us to learn, well, what do you think? Like, I don't have an opinion, being
Right.
Cortana, but hey, what are you using right now? What system are you using? I think this idea that we use these personal queries to help create a conversation, learn a little bit more about you so the predictive search behavior gets a lot better is something that we're really excited about. Probably one of the areas that we think we're really going to go big and innovate on in the next year.
How do you find the split, by the way, from Windows Phone now in terms of the spoken and type search? Can you say what the split is like on that now and then compared to what's happening?
Small single digits for spoken versus text.
Okay.
And now we're into bigger order of magnitude better. Like multiply that by 10 for voice versus the type queries now. On what we're seeing on the developer preview, which admittedly developer preview
Right.
enthusiast audience still trying it out, but over many weeks, so far so good. Like we're really excited that people are using it, and we're seeing things like query length get a little longer. People are asking natural queries. Boy, now we can start to really get people to use Bing and get more of its capabilities expressed because of all the work that we've done.
Yeah, the query length, that being larger actually was a little bit surprising to me in the developer preview population. Like I would expect them to be more used to using keywords to do search, and that's something I think all of you probably need to think through. Like, what does it mean from a natural language query point of view as opposed to a keyword-based query? How does that change the business or the approach? And so it's significant that's so much longer.
And do you find a difference between the types of searches that happen if someone speaks them versus typing them in? Like, are people only speaking for searches like, I need a restaurant? Are they heavy on those kind of local things, or are they pretty much the same kinds of general classes as on desktop?
They follow the fairly similar distribution of the categories that they do from a Bing.com point of view if you were using Bing.com in a mobile scenario, right? So obviously when you're out and about, your search query set looks a lot different than if you're sitting in front of your desktop or you're at your workstation at work. So because Cortana is on a phone and you're mobile, you do have that more mobile skew of the categories. But it's not significantly different in the kinds of things people want. It's because they all still want the same things.
And that was the other thing I was wondering is
and chit chat.
And the difference with mobile versus desktop in general. I'm assuming that mobile you're seeing more location-oriented kind of queries, but
That is typical, yeah. For I think all the platforms.
For the SEO folks that are here, what are the things that they should be considering? Is there markup that they should be doing so that Cortana can somehow predict their content for people that are going to be picking that up, or that you talked about some of the app development that's going on there, so ways that they can hook in that stuff?
Sure. Well, certainly from an app development, I can do that. Maybe you can help answer the other. On the app development, the SDK is completely free to Windows Phone developers. So if your company has a development arm, or you have an app, or you want to have an app, there's a lot of abilities you can do. That app that I showed you with the third parties, like there's an app studio that you don't even have to learn how to code to get an entire Windows Phone app. Now that doesn't have Cortana integration, but then adding Cortana is like, I don't know, a week to get that to happen. We do all the heavy lifting from speech recognition. We've solved we're well on the way to solving the speech problem. People don't have difficulty doing that part of it. Then it's back to just, how do you hook that into your business?
I think it's still early for us. Our number one goal is to really try to, like I said, change behavior, really get people interested in using Cortana, create patterns where people are using predictive search more and more. How we optimize that, monetization, other things a little bit out there for us. But one thing we have looked at is schema.org. So, we work on schema.org together with Google and others. And we like the idea of semantic markup means it's much easier for us to understand things like email. Oh, this is a flight email because you've told us, versus we got to write these natural language engine parsers right now, which require a bunch of updates. And if Expedia or someone was to change the format of the email in some way that we couldn't predict, then we have to put out new client code to be able to do that. So we're big advocates of and there's a talk actually at Build on schema and some of the integration we're doing. We're really pushing this idea of semantic markup, especially for emails and other things that come in that Cortana processes, is a great way for people to get their content into the system.
Because I think, if I remember, there was some of the, I thought that was mine off. I was like, I turned it all off, so I don't know where that was coming from. Cortana really wanted to speak out.
I guess.
Yes, you're talking about me. I could answer the question, but no. If I recall, like, for example, with some of the flight information, you'll extract it as best you can, and because this looks like that. But there are also ways that the airlines, when they send this stuff out, can actually structurally behind the scenes tell you explicitly, this is a flight, and it's better for you. And so it sounds like if people are making use of schema, that's a good way for them to prepare for any kind of data that starts.
That's right. There are two kinds of parsers, or two sections of the parser for that particular scenario. There's one which is looking for schema.org entity markup for that particular kind of flight information, and then the other is well, if we don't find that, can we just intelligently figure out that this is about a flight reservation? The second one works for some things that don't have the schema, but if you're an airline company, you should absolutely add the schema markup.
How about advertising? Are we going to have ads that will come into Cortana?
So right now our stance is ads served through Bing for queries that are clearly web queries with the same kind of user experience that you're used to. No problem, it's great. The intent is clear, people know what's going on. Ads inside of Cortana right now, no, we think we're kind of in the stage where we really have to build trust with the user. Once we have trust established and people know, hey, I know how the system works, I know what I can tell it I like versus don't like, then clearly monetization opportunities are things we're going to explore. But it's so nascent right now. We feel like we don't want to violate trust. We have to take that very seriously. We're asking people to give us a lot of personal information, And the idea that you enter into a contract with Cortana and it's binding and she understands completely how that's used, we just don't want to, it's too early. But we think there's all kinds of opportunities around, even the simple thing like, hey, where should I go to eat this weekend? Clearly there's wisdom of the crowds, Bing-related data, Yelp-related data. There's all kinds of stuff your friends are doing. But, there's definitely some commercial opportunities that we've started to think about. But I think in this first year especially, it's just really important for us to establish what it is, how I use it, and the fact that, I get it. What I tell Cortana is completely locked into her.
And we get, there's this concept of the location gating, so that I'm in a particular area and I can set reminders for a particular area to me or get information. Do you think we get to the point also where you're able to say to Cortana, okay, make sure you remind me about any offers that are available or any special deals that are, when I'm traveling around.
Yep.
And then if you're a bricks and mortar store or whatever, that you've coded that up so that you can say, hey, you're nearby and so you're getting those alerts.
Yeah, I think those kind of scenarios make a lot of sense to us. Declarative intent, I want this thing and I've told you I want it, Cortana, go make it happen for me. We love those scenarios because you've already told us that's okay. We get a little paranoid about the inferred scenarios.
Right.
Hey, because Danny's looking for a new digital camera on web search or through apps, somehow that gives her permission to start inserting some kind of commercial presence. It's that one that we have to really think carefully and hard about. There might be some opportunities there. I think we just need a little bit more time to figure out how to balance that very carefully in this predictive world. Like, when is Cortana talking to me as my assistant versus when is she bringing information that's helpful that might have some commercial intent behind it? I think that's a very difficult thing that we have to think through over the next planning period where we're kind of looking at Cortana over the next 2 to 3 years. But I think I've told you what I want, it's perfectly okay, please get that for me scenario, those are ones that we understand and we have to go nail.
And even before we get to that, from a Cortana perspective, the platform itself enables those types of scenarios again. So like if you're a developer of a Safeway app or you're a developer of some other kind of app, the platform totally supports the ability to both invoke the reminder. So you could say Safeway, remind me when I get there to show me the best coupons or whatever. And then the app itself could trigger based on location, geofencing around each Safeway instance.
So if I had an app, if I had like a Safeway app and there was notifications in there, and I also rigged it so that it would talk to Cortana, then Cortana would just give me those sort of...
Right, the extension to Cortana is being able to go from Cortana into the app, and then in the app you could figure out that it was a reminder, for example. Right. And then independent of Cortana, the app itself can have, new in Windows Phone 8.1, geofence triggers to launch toast notifications to the user in those situations.
Now, is this the end of us actively searching for stuff? Is the search box dead and it's all done?
No. I can't imagine that.
I mean, if we look at Cortana usage, as much as we're excited about predictive search and the benefits it's going to bring, I mean, traditional search is the primary thing people are doing. It's a model people are used to. It's something that I think over many, many years we've trained people to get really good at. That's why we love the idea of blending it together. We're not trying to teach you to do something different. We're trying to build on what you already know and selectively introduce new things that we think enhance that experience. The other thing Rob and I were talking about is this idea of these reactive queries leading to predictive behaviors is probably the most interesting thing to us. Like the idea that I can search and say, oh, of course I want World Cup updates or NBA Finals updates or updates on this digital camera. I want to know when the price drops. We think this declarative intent with traditional search, it saves us so much effort. Like I don't have to know all these I don't have to run all these inferences. I don't have to know all these places you've been. If you tell us and you're searching for something, there's a very high signal intent there. So I think we love the idea of marrying them together. And like I said, based on usage patterns, it's not going anywhere. If anything, we think it's going to increase. Like our bet is Cortana makes you more likely to search, not less. I mean, we don't think predictive search somehow shrinks that pie. We think it grows the overall traditional search pie. Like that's our point of view. That's what we're striving to do.
Yep. Modeling it after a real assistance in the real world. You're always going to have questions of your assistant. You're always going to ask your assistant to perform operations for you. That assistant, he'll get better over time at sort of guessing, but he'll always know when the signal is super strong. Like, I don't want that taxi provider, I want that taxi provider. Right? That'll never go away.
Now, will Cortana come over to other platforms, to Android or iOS, similar to how, like, I can get Google now and it's in Android, but I can also get it as part of the Google search app on iOS.
Yeah.
So will I get Cortana in other places?
It is it's a really good question. I think we know that Cortana across Microsoft devices, matter of time, right? We're working on it, we understand it. I think we know we want to scale Cortana both internationally and across devices. When that happens and how we make it happen, a lot of planning going on to figure that out. The Android iOS question's a good one. I think internally we've started thinking about if you are a Windows user, say a PC user, and you have an Android phone, what is our story? Is it reasonable to think that Cortana would be very smart if she didn't know all the things that were happening on your phone? It's a bit of a head scratcher for us right now. I think we really have to think about what is Microsoft's role in the overall mobile ecosystem outside of what we're doing on Windows Phone. And then when you have these heterogeneous environments of devices, I have a Kindle tablet and I have an Android phone and I have a Windows PC. Like what is the story? Like what are the services that Microsoft would build to make that a great experience? I think Office 365 has led the way in a lot of the thinking the company has in that right now. We are still trying to get Cortana adopted on Windows Phone and try to figure out what it wants to become. But certainly internally we're having a lot of discussions about, if you kind of think of the snapshot of a customer that's using, say, one Microsoft device, how do we make sure they have an awesome Cortana experience when they have all these other devices that have signal and data and intent that we need to capture? We don't have a story for that yet. It's something that we're actively talking about and trying to figure out, though.
Okay. And one of the differences I see, too, is, with Satya now in charge and the mobile-first, cloud-first strategy and approach, you see a lot of differences in the Microsoft of today than of the Microsoft a few years ago. And there are a lot of investments that Microsoft has already made, and we're making even more of them in these other ecosystems. Like Skype is available on like everything, TVs, all over the place. Office is making a lot of headway there too. So independent product groups are already making that progress. But then you have to think, well, what does it mean for Microsoft as a whole? Microsoft right now is working the best together I've ever seen, and I've been at the company for 19 years. And so is there a strategy for Microsoft that makes sense, and what role does Cortana play in that particular environment?
I would say, Danny, the other thing we're thinking hard about is it's interesting to think about the future of these assistants and whether they become a reason to buy into an ecosystem.
Right.
So that is kind of the other tension we have is if you play this out 5 to 10 years and you think about these assistants become the reason you choose Android or iOS or Windows, then what's our position there? Could Cortana be the thing that as a Windows user, I got to get a Windows phone? I feel like that's the new interface for the way I communicate with all my devices. So I think that is the other thing we're thinking hard about is as we build up Cortana and we think about predictive search and we think about all these capabilities, we're essentially making the point that we want to create a new interface for how you interact with your devices. Does that become an ecosystem choice thing? Because if that's the case, then we definitely want people in the Windows ecosystem. Right. So it's kind of balancing all these things and trying to figure out what our position and point of view is what's going on now.
But it seems like you could, because the Bing app is popular both on, and especially like with iPad, you have the Bing app that's out there, you have the Bing app that's available for Android as well, and so people are using those. So to me, it almost feels like, well, now I'm going to want Cortana there.
Well, I want everybody to want Cortana there. Then they buy a phone of ours. But the other thing to think about is there are hardware aspects to an experience that are critically important. Like you've seen in the past, Android has the OK Google. Siri just announced the Hey Siri. They're doing those on their platforms and only their platforms because it requires custom silicon to run low power enough to be able to be possible.
This is the always-on listening where it's just waiting for you to say that.
So things like that and other hardware integration points just aren't available to any of the platform providers on the other platforms.
Right. You kind of touched on this, but I wanted to come back. Is Cortana going to jump off the phone and into our desktops, into Xbox, into our cars?
We can make no formal statement about that. But,
She's making a stage presence now on Bing.com.
She is making a stage presence on Bing.com. I think it is very natural to think that an assistant that only runs on one of your devices, as useful as we want to make it, as much as we love it, the idea that she will be pervasive is very important to us. So I mean, we are actively thinking and planning and working on how can we make her scale as broadly as possible, device plus markets.
Great. We've got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. If you have a question, put your hand up, because we're going to actually bring a microphone to you. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. If you don't have a question, that's also fine. There's one over here. I have to get them up. I can hear you, and I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
Why did you choose that name?
Why is... all right, what's the Cortana backstory?
Oh, boy. So I'll do the short version of the long story. So there was a guy, Robert Howard, on my team that came up with this personal assistant, proactive meets natural language concept early. I mean, early 2012, we started thinking about it, planning. And he looked at, assets within the company and said, hey, this Cortana thing, what if Cortana 500 years in the future would exist today? Like, what seems kind of cool? Like that, it's a great concept. And it was amazing how it rallied the team because, if you've played Halo, you understand Cortana is there for Master Chief. It's a very private relationship. It gets interesting in Halo 4 if you've ever played that game. We're not trying to go
But
there.
you got to step back. There are like maybe 3 people who've never played Halo, so don't understand Cortana being part of Halo.
Yeah, so Cortana Halo is the big franchise for Xbox, and Cortana is Master Chief's AI. And the idea is she was born from a doctor, cloned as part of this doctor's brain, and then attached to this Spartan, this Master Chief. And she does a whole bunch of stuff for him. Gets him out of jams, helps him do different things. So, we had an engineering team, we all play Halo, it just made sense. And then we got into this whole concept of, this was way before we decided Cortana would have a personality. But then we did a bunch of research. We realized that, boy, for people to tell us stuff, there's a whole bunch of research around the more human you can make something feel, the more likely you are to trust it. That's why people like to personify objects and other things, like the little Roomba vacuum cleaner, I like to call it a name. So we felt like, boy, we need a personality. The Cortana name really stuck out to us. We looked at a whole bunch of other names. We considered variants of the Bing name itself, like, is this just search with some predictive capabilities? We said, no, this is actually, you want to talk to it like it's a person. So long story short, after many, many months of internal debates and what should we call it, we decided Cortana. That also gave us access to 343. It's a studio in Kirkland that makes Cortana, and they create a backstory for us with Halo and everything else. So it worked out really well. I think we're experimenting with the name and different regions and how we think about maybe there are multiple personalities, not multiple personalities living within one assistant, but maybe you could choose.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of different directions we think we can take it in. But really it was born of an engineer on my team, really smart guy, looked across the company and said, that Cortana thing makes a lot of sense, and it stuck.